Welcome to the Ardan Labs podcast. Our special guest today, and I mean special, I can't even believe I got him, Johnny Boursiquot. Johnny, dude, it's taken me like 3 years to get you on this show.
I know,
3 years. This is how busy this man is, okay? And I grabbed him by the back of his hair. If you're watching the video, he has no hair. And I said, Johnny, that's it. You're coming on. I know where you live. He said, okay, Bill, relax. I'm going to be here. So there it is. So this is for everybody that's been waiting for this show. I finally got Johnny to give me an hour and a half so we could talk. Johnny, thank you for coming.
Oh, glad to be here. Overdue.
And you are coming to us from Baltimore, right?
Baltimore is my closest metro area, but I live in the burbs, like in Maryland. So yeah, closest to me.
Yeah. So you gotta mow the lawn every other week, and
yeah.
Do you do that?
Oh yeah, I do that. I do that. But here's the thing though. I also a while back, I think maybe like a year or so ago, I bought my kids call it a Roomba for the lawn. So it's like a bot, right? That basically it goes in and does most of the work.
No, time out. I don't care. Time out. Okay, first of all, there are two things in this world I never want to do because I feel like they're a prison sentence. Okay. Painting, and mowing the lawn. And that's because there is nothing you can do to speed that up. There is nothing. You can make it go longer,
right?
But you can't make it go faster. Right. Those types of tasks, I just don't have the propensity, the personality. I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. So I have to pay somebody to do the lawn because I'll lose my mind. Mm-hmm. Now, second of all, I got to tell you about this Roomba thing because I bought a small mower, mm-hmm. which is a pain in the neck because the grass fills up. Maybe I got different grass in my ring. The grass fills up in the bag so quickly. You feel like you do one line and it's like empty. One line, empty. Right. So how does this Roomba handle mm-hmm. that? Does it cut it fine enough where it doesn't have to?
Yeah, it's basically it's adjustable. I think they call them like a lawn rover or something like that. But I mean, there's like tons of manufacturers nowadays, right? It's kind of becoming popular. Yeah, it's like a thing now, right? So basically, all you have to do is kind of put a bounding wire, like usually like on the grass. The grass kind of grows over it eventually. You have a bounding wire, and you just program and say, hey, I want you to spend most of your time in this area of the lawn, right? This area of the lawn. So it comes with an app and everything, and you can like let it loose, right? So it's kind of slow. It moves slowly. But if you're like, you put it outside and you go about your business, who cares how long it takes, right?
God,
Eventually
dude,
it gets the whole lawn.
For that. Whoa. I have one for the house, which is beautiful, except now that I spend more time in the house working, it's so noisy. If I don't go outside, I just shut it off. So the thing hasn't even been running because it turns on and I'm in a meeting or something, right? Shut it off. Oh, no, I'm looking for one of the, I have a great company that does it all, but dude, they even thought about it.
Time saver.
Oh my God. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to look that up. My mind has been blown. I got to get my mind back here. Roomba for the lawn. Why am I only hearing about this now? See, this is not good, Johnny. Why are you not tweeting about this stuff? This is why I follow you, damn it.
For them tips.
Okay. So for everybody, which is almost nobody, who doesn't know who you are, give everybody the 2-minute spiel on what Johnny's doing today.
The 2-minute spiel. So yeah, I'll do a TLDR. So basically, I'll focus on three things that I think are going to be sort of interesting, and we can kind of dive from there. So I'm going to talk about origins, because I think that's important. I'm going to talk about sort of a sort of fun fact related to the origins, and I'm going to talk about sort of computers, sort of how I got into it and how that came to be. So first off, origins. I'm originally from the Caribbean, so I was born in.
Wait! Time out!
Let's do it.
Time out. This is my job to get you there. I just need the 2-minute spiel on what Johnny is doing right now. Like elevator pitch. We just fell in the elevator. I said, hey, hi, my name's Bill. Hey, my name's Johnny. Hey, Johnny, what do you do? Boom.
All right. So here it is then. I'm a software engineer by trade. That's how I make my living. I'm currently a chief technology officer, right? Trying to build a startup. I love to teach. I love to mentor folks, and I love to be part of the Go community in specifically. Yeah, that's like the the TLDR.
Okay, and what's the company you're at right now that you're doing that work for?
It's called Skilltype, all one word.
Okay, and what are you doing at Skilltype? You said you were the
Yeah, I'm the chief technology officer slash
CTO
yeah,
slash coder
slash coder slash
I mean,
manager slash operations slash SRE, slash a product manager. I mean, you name it. That's the life of the startup, right? You wear all the hats.
yeah. But one day you got to give up the coding there. That's the problem with the
Ooh, I will
CTO.
delay that as long as I possibly can. I love coding, man. I love coding.
I know you do, but what will happen eventually is you realize you're slowing the team down because you're not getting. So you slowly start to take smaller pieces, then you slowly start to take just something you can do in an hour, and then you realize that you just can't. And you can't.
See,
do
I
it
mean, but
anymore, man.
nowadays though, with LLMs and Gen AI, I mean, I can be just as fast as the rest of the crew, right? Right?
Well, now you're not coding anymore. Now you've already handed it off, dude.
Now I'm
So
just inspecting output.
that's it. You've now become a prompt engineer. So
Right.
I don't know about that. Okay, sweet. So now we know where Johnny is. We're gonna put you in the time machine here. So stay with me. So I'm gonna be interrupting you. Right?
Nice.
Don't get too far ahead. I'm one of these. I realized on one of the last shows that I'm one of these people that have to keep time in order, like the chronological stuff. And I realized that if you've been listening to the show, you've heard the story already.
Yep.
But I cannot watch a movie when they're bouncing back and forth between time and they don't necessarily even keep that in order. I can't watch that kind of movie. I'm watching a movie now, this Witches movie on Netflix, which is cool. And they'll start the show maybe in the past and then they come back to the present. I can handle that. But dude, if you're doing bop, my brain just shuts down.
You should look up the movie called Tenet. It's a mind-bending, twisty, like the stuff you're talking about right now. Even I mean, I love those kind of movies, but even I have a hard time with those things. But Tenet, man, that will trip you up. But anyways, let's carry on.
Right, yeah. So I got to keep you in order here. So we're gonna put you in the time machine, but you got to answer two questions first. So we got to. So what city were you in, and what year was it when you graduated high school?
I was in College Park, Maryland. That's the city, although I went to high school in Bethesda, Maryland. And I graduated, the year was 1998.
98, dude. So
Yes.
yeah, so 98. Okay. It just gives us an idea of like what tech was, right? When you were like 17, 18. Bethesda, every time I hear that city, I just think Naval Academy for some reason. Did you see it must have been a lot of military people in that town or people?
No, not really. Not in the sort of Bethesda, Silver Spring area. Anybody who's on the East Coast has been to Maryland or the DMV, our DC, Maryland, Virginia area is gonna know what the cities I'm talking about. But yeah, not a ton of that. You're likely to run across that more so, like in Annapolis or even sometimes in DC, right? Like you're more likely to run into that, but not really the rest of these areas.
I'm kind of curious before I ask the second most important question of the podcast. Actually, I'm really curious. Like, what did your parents do for a living that had you in, say, Baltimore? But like, if you're in Huntsville and you kind of grew up there, your parents were in aerospace, I think, at some level, or NASA, right? Because like that's the industry there. And I think of that industry. I think of your area either as like politics or military. Like, I don't know, dude. So
Right.
I don't know.
So I'm gonna blow your mind.
Weird stuff. I don't know.
I'm gonna blow your mind, right? Because not like this area, or really like where I basically grew up from 15 years on, kind of had very little impact on me, I would say, than it might, like in terms of career and aspirations and everything else. Like, and this is where the origin story comes in, right? So I'm originally from the Caribbean. I'm originally born in Haiti. I came to the States when I was only 15 years old. And this was like 1994. I remember specifically December 1994. I get off the plane, walking off the tarmac, and there's a blizzard, there's a snowstorm, right? And I'm ill prepared as can be, right? I just came from a warm,
You're in the Caribbean.
I came in, and if it wasn't for my extended family, which were already here and established, they knew we were gonna step off the plane. I'm sort of unprepared, and they got me a jacket, a coat, and everything else. And this is like I came in, and that was like 1994. And a fun fact related to that is basically I didn't know much English at all, right?
That's what I was going to
So
ask you.
yeah.
That's
So
what I was gonna.
from that December 1994 to when I started school, right, in what is it, January, 95, I literally had to learn English, right, in that span of time, so by watching a metric ton of television, asking parents and cousins who lived in the house, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because I only knew Creole, Haitian Creole, and French, right? That's what they teach in schools. So I had to learn English, and the things I was scared out of my mind of basically sounding right, not only looking different, but sounding different, and sort of my mannerisms not being sort of what kids I would expect to run into, basically so being so different from them that I worked very very hard to get rid of the accent. I mean, even now if you listen closely you'll pick up some of it, right? But that was my thing. There was such fear of being different, which is kind of something, and when I think back I'm like, maybe I tried a little too hard, right? But these are things you learn later on in life, right? You're trying to be like everybody else. Right now, I don't want to be like everybody else, right? But back then, as a kid, as a 15-year-old, you're like terrified, right? So that was
Yeah,
my
yeah,
fun
yeah.
fact, right? So I was trying to learn
So,
English before school.
so you're like my wife, man, because she came from Columbia
Oh,
after university at 22, didn't speak a lick of English, and you would not hear an accent on her unless you're looking for it. Now, if I get her excited, okay, her English starts to break. So I'll be like, baby, your English is breaking. And then the moment I say that, it's full-fledged Spanish, which honestly, I don't mind getting yelled at in Spanish because I have no idea what she's saying. So I'll just be like, oh, so you love me. I see that. So I'm imagining because you were 15, your Creole is still good. I imagine you still speak it around family. And I do imagine that if I got you overly excited, your English would start to break down a little bit too. The
you'll pick
accent.
up, yeah. Yeah, you'll pick some of it up. Yep.
No, but yeah, it's really amazing because there is no accent unless you're absolutely looking for it.
Right.
You're the second person I've ever met that has succeeded in that. I'm not sure that I know there's others, but
Right.
like
Right.
who I met who originally would never have guessed that English was the second language, not the first, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
Right.
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so second question. Here we go. Right, clear your mind. Do not think too hard on this. Here we go. First thought of you working on a computer, doing something where you made it do something. You were on the keyboard that got you really excited about it.
So my mom back in Haiti, basically right before we emigrated, right, to the States, my mom had signed me up for a typing class, but she accidentally signed me up for what they then called computer informatics. Like that's a rough translation I can think of. Basically, it was basically back then one of the career paths adults took. Why was one of the trades was typist. So literally, the old school mechanical typing things. Basically, you could go work as a secretary in an office or whatever it is, right? So she signed me up for a class, basically trying to get me ready, trying to give me a trade early on. She signed me up for this class, mistakenly thinking that it's going to be one of those things, but she actually puts me in one of the some more advanced sort of classes where they actually have computers and with a lab and everything else. So that's when the first time I get exposed to.
How old are
like,
you again? How
Oh,
old are
at
you
that
again?
point, I'm like 14-ish,
Okay.
almost
Okay. Right.
15, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so and I sit down at this thing, and they're like teaching us how to turn it on, what the different keys do, and everything else. So I'm learning how to type, quote unquote, but I'm learning how to use a machine. I'm learning how to use like diskettes, like really large floppy disk and stuff like that. Like learning how to use the computer, I get exposed to so basic, and Pascal and all these things. I'm like, whoa, this is like a whole new world like I didn't even know existed. So I got the taste, right? But it was only in the class. My additional exposure to computers only came, right, once I came to the States and got access to what they called in high school then the computer lab, right? And then the computers in the libraries, right? But even then, some of those weren't connected to the internet. And even then, the early days of the internet, you can only use like browsers like Mosaic and Netscape and things like that, right? But that was my first, like, completely accidentally came across, and
Wow, that's
stumbled into
wild.
this life. Yeah.
But now you're like so I am, because it sounds like you also didn't have a computer at home, at least during high school. So
No.
I'm wondering, like, when you had to leave the lab and you leave that, like, you're jonesing, right, to like get on that computer. Did you ever ask at any point during, like, say, before you graduate high school, can we have a computer in the home, or that wasn't even an
Oh,
option?
I really wanted and had asked for it, and they'd be like, well, I didn't even bother asking. I remember looking at back then. You used to get these flyers in the mail with computers. Like computers were becoming kind of the personal computer was kind of becoming a thing, and people would get like adverts in the mail all the time. You could see Comp USA was selling this thing for like $2,000, and Circuit City had they don't have Circuit Cities anymore for anybody who doesn't know.
I don't
But,
even think CompUSA is around anymore.
yeah, exactly. Those big box stores, they're gone now. But you had the adverts, and now I was looking at those things and looking at the specs and everything else. I'm like, they were like $2,000 minimum. And I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna go to my parents, who just came to the States working two jobs, like to go drop 2K, right? So at this point, I started basically. That's where I started getting exposed to this whole new world of people who are building computers on their own, like assembling from different parts and pieces. I'm like, hey, I can get this motherboard. I had to figure out what a motherboard was, right? I can get this motherboard for $50. I can get this CPU, right, for $70, whatever. So my mind started sort of racing. So I'm like, okay, the first job I get, my job is gonna be to assemble all of these components myself. Right. And eventually I did. And this was one of the sort of formative experiences of my life where my first computer was actually built by like my own hands. I had to assemble it and learn about things and kind of make it work.
We did a lot of that in the 90s. Tiger Direct, I remember here in Miami, was like where you went. And we did a lot of that in the 90s. But I think at some point, maybe after the millennials started, it just became cheaper to buy than to assemble yourself.
Yeah.
And knowing all the dip switches and this and that, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I went through that, but I was really grateful when I didn't have to like build anymore. I could just buy something that was because look, you're buying parts and you didn't really know if the parts were going to be completely compatible
Right.
in terms of performance and stuff. But I've swapped out we used to do that in the 90s. It was the only way when you had no money
Right.
to but it is kind of cool when you first boot that thing and it turns on and you're like, whoo!
You're cooking now.
I remember, man, even in the offices, like, working in the 90s, you'd constantly be telling your bosses, I need more memory, I need more memory, I need faster memory. Yeah. So they would buy more memory. I would take the old memory sticks home.
Put them in, see if they work.
I would put them in. Suddenly I had like more memory the next day and more memory the next day. And I'd be right. And then they'd swap those out and you get faster memory, oh my God, I had a box of memory chips at some point, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
That was it. Those were interesting times. So then by the time you graduate high school, I'm assuming you did at high school, you ended up with what were you doing for work? So yeah, how were you making that money, John?
Man, my first job was as a cashier at Roy Rogers.
Oh my God, time out. I loved Roy Rogers, dude. I had one near my house. We didn't get to go very often, but when we did, it was like Christmas. Yeah. I don't know why, bro. They had great chicken. Great chicken, dude.
I loved it.
Whatever happened to Roy Rogers? Oh my God.
There was like one left in the state of Maryland, I think, like, years and years ago. Now it's all been bought and replaced by like McDonald's and whatnot. But like that was my first job as a cashier. My second job was as a cashier also at CVS. And between those two jobs, right, earning whatever minimum wage was back then, I'll scrape together, right, a few bucks here and there. Like I remember buying, I was at my job at CVS when I bought my first, what I considered high-speed modem. It was like a 33.6 or something like that,
33 baud, 96,
right.
Yeah, 33
Yeah,
baud.
it was, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get on the internet. It's on now,
Until you have to install the second phone line because everybody wants to use the phone.
Exactly. They just pick up the phone, all of a sudden, click, you stop, your internet is cut off because somebody picked up the phone.
Dude, I got my first house in 95 and I immediately put 2 phone lines in that house. Mm-hmm. One for my wife and one for the office, man.
It was a pain.
Oh my God, it was amazing. Wow, Roy Rogers. And then I remember Kenny Rogers was trying to compete against Roy Rogers at the time too, dude. Oh, God, I cannot believe it. I have a picture of the Roy Rogers store, exactly where it was on Long Island, man. Wow. I cannot believe you just did that. I couldn't tell you what I had for dinner last night, But
You remember them Roy Rogers?
oh my God, did you give you a free meal when you went in? Do you believe like these companies don't do that? I would even think like
No,
McDonald's gave you a,
you get a discount, but yeah, you don't get. But I'm sure, as kids, we'd be like rowdy, and we'd go in the back, and somebody's putting frying some fries, and you just steal one
yeah.
or two. I mean, that's what you do as a teenager, working at a
Oh
fast
my,
food restaurant.
dude, I worked at a retail store like my first year in university. I didn't go away. I stayed home. And it was a high-end store. It was a Williams Sonoma store, okay? Williams Sonoma. I don't know if they still have stores, but this retail store was crazy. They had two of everything, and people would walk in and just say, which one's more expensive? Which one's more expensive? That's the one they would buy.
That's the one they want.
It didn't,
Wow.
yeah. These were stores in these rich, like, areas, dude,
Right,
okay?
right,
And I was like middle class, maybe low middle class, but I worked in this store. And I would just like, I got to where I was just like, this one's more expensive. Okay. Now, when we were in the warehouse downstairs and we were hungry, they had a rule like if something broke, you couldn't sell it. You just have to put it on a piece of paper. So we'd be downstairs and we're like, we're hungry. We'd be like, oops, that just broke. And then we'd be eating. I mean, we weren't like totally abusing it, but there were times where we were just like, oh, that candy bar just broke.
Yeah. Take it home.
I'd be like, if I was at Roy Rogers, I'd be like wrapping something. Go, oh, that just fell on
That
the floor.
just can't sell it.
Oops. Okay, tell me about high school a little bit more. I want to know. You're an athletic guy. In fact, Johnny's been working out hard. If you're following Johnny on his Twitter account now, he's now starting to make us all feel like I'm gonna just use the word shit because he's now telling us exactly what body parts he's working out and how strong. And I feel like I'm getting stronger from just watching Johnny. I don't have to do it. I mentally just go, nice. That was a good workout today, Johnny. I'm feeling good. So Johnny's getting here's a funny story. Okay, here's a funny story. So Johnny shows up at GopherCon Europe. And he's in the back of the room, like first day he was in the back of the rooms. So I see Johnny. I'm like, I got to go say hi to Johnny. So I walk in the back of this big room and I see Johnny. And the first thing I notice is Johnny's put on some like muscle. Like Johnny's looking, whoa. So I'm like, Johnny, oh my God, you're looking good. Your wife must be like incredibly excited. And he's like, well, she's right here. Why don't you ask her? And I went, oh my God, thank God I didn't say anything bad.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
No, so you're an athletic guy. I'm just that's the point of that story. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. In high school, were you playing sports? Were you doing music? Was it something else?
It was, you know what? It was interesting because, I mentioned before sort of my fear, right, of sort of being sort of othered, right, and sort of not being able to fit in. So very early on, I figured out that, hey, the people who are like the jocks and the people who are on teams, team sports and everything else, they seemingly look like they got picked on less. So I'm like, okay, this might be a strategy, right? Let me see if I can pick up a sport like basketball. Back in Haiti, I used to do soccer all the time because that's what we did in the neighborhood. That's like a national sport. But in the States, especially where I live, basketball was the thing. So I was like, okay, let me pick up basketball and actually try to do this. And thankfully, I made the team. So I played JV and I went on to play varsity basketball. But that was sort of my thing. But outside off the court, right, or outside of practice, I spent most of my time sort of learning. Basically, I was just, whatever time I could get in the computer lab, or whatever time I could get like really to myself. Like I'd be perusing through whatever manuals of technical books I could find. Like I was just thirsty and hungry for knowledge. And so most of my time was spent either on the court, practice or games, or just on my own, just learning and trying to get better at something. Oh, no, at what? I don't know, but was just hungry for any knowledge.
So then, were you building anything? Were you building websites? Were you publishing websites? You're in the lab, you're building some. I wrote a lot of games in BASIC when I was learning. Mm-hmm. Terminal-based games. That's what I did, right? And I'm learning in the 80s, dude. Like from like 85, and I go to university in 90, right? So I didn't publish these games. I wasn't like, there was no internet really, right? Right. But I was just building really cool games. In fact, I have a printout of one of them in my closet. Like one day I'm thinking of like trying to put it back in and see if it ever works, right? But so you got to build things to learn, I think, at the end of the day. So what were you building?
I remember spending a lot of time in I think it was either Basic or Pascal. I can't remember at this point, but I loved I loved building sort of these fractal pattern sort of programs, right? Basically, you could once I learned how to control color, RGB colors and settings and everything else, I could draw like circles and different shapes and everything else. I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. So I spent a lot of time understanding how the math of these things works and trying to build these programs that created very beautiful, colorful patterns on the screen. And then I also remember actually when I wasn't doing sort of stuff with the terminal or writing these kinds of programs, these basic programs, the internet started becoming more and more popular. And around that time, this is when sort of early websites started becoming a thing. This is when you have like those really gaudy animated GIFs, blank tags everywhere, these kinds of things. And that's really when sort of GeoCities sort of kind of became a thing. And I was like, oh, I need me a website on GeoCities, right? So I
Not
need me one of.
MySpace. Was MySpace around yet? I mean, MySpace.
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet,
Like,
not yet.
yeah,
Okay.
back then GeoCs was a thing, right? And basically, they had this brand new browser they had put on all the machines. Out was Mosaic, and on now was Netscape Navigator. That was like the big thing, right? So I was like, wow, this internet thing is amazing, right? There wasn't a ton of websites you could go to. Like I think Yahoo was one of them. GeoCities was another. Like there was like a handful of very popular destinations on the internet. But I was like, okay, I'm on the internet. Either I'm on the internet. Or I'm on the internet. That became the thing. It's just completely trying to learn HTML, trying to learn, like very rudiment. I don't even think CSS was a thing back then. It was very rudimentary, like way to like put things together. But basically, learning HTML was kind of the first. People don't like to call HTML a programming language, but to me, it was
It's programming. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, exactly. But you had to learn, right? Basically, view source was how you learn to code.
So did you publish any of these sites? Did they end up in the public domain at all?
You know what? I've never actually tried looking. Maybe if I went back to the Wayback Machine or something like where the Internet Archive or something, maybe I might find something. But I do remember spending a lot of time on GeoCities and trying to build. One of the things that I remember building. That got me really excited is back then people had those what do you call them, those pages, those forums where you could submit some sort of message to say you were here or something like that, right? What was it? I can't remember the terminology we used to use, but you'd have a special area on your website where people could actually submit input, right? And you can sort of render it on the page. Basically, they have a name.
I don't know.
Anyways, it's one of those fun things that everybody was doing at some point, right? Like basically, being able to accept input, from users on the internet to say, hey, I was here, you're looking at your website.
I missed all of that. I was already a working professional and with kids and stuff, dude. Like I missed some of that stuff, man. So like IRC might have been the only thing I was maybe doing outside of work that
Did you ever do the bulletin boards, the BBS stuff? And yeah.
I did it for work where I needed to find a driver because at the time CompuServe was where people were putting drivers and stuff. This is early 90s, like 92, 93, 94. Mm-hmm. And CompuServe was where I would go if I needed something. But I wasn't interacting socially other than a little IRC, which already scared the hell out of me even right. At that time. Okay, so you're about to graduate high school. You're playing basketball. You're spending time in labs when you can, hanging out with friends, obviously. Mm-hmm. What's the next thing? Where's your head? At that time, everybody kind of has to go to college at some level. Right. So I imagine that college was on your radar screen. So talk a little bit about what you were looking at, what schools you were looking at, where was your head then?
So for me, like when I look back, one of the biggest sort of things I had that sort of an impact on me, right, was coming to the States. To me, I never took that for granted, right? Even at 15, when you're 15 years old and you've seen, some poverty, right, in your own home country, and you've seen sort of the lack of opportunity, the lack of access. When you've seen that stuff, and then now you come, in a country like the United States, and you see the abundance of it all, it's hard to take, right, the opportunity you have for granted. Really is. You can't squander that stuff, right? So for me, like very early on, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna miss my shot here. I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to live better, right, than I would have had I stayed and sort of and continued my path down in Haiti. So this was kind of what propelled me as well to always be studying, always be learning or doing something, right? But so when it came to the college, I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to college, right? There's just no doubt about it, right? But for me, it was sort of it didn't matter where I went to college or what I did in college. Well, I knew I wanted to do something computer related, but I'm like, okay, I need to go to college in some shape or form. At the time though, I was doing pretty well in basketball as well. So I had won awards. I mean, I could dunk. I won dunking championships. So by all accounts, right, I'm getting all my friends hyping me up, like, oh yeah, you should go play college ball and you should do this and that, whatever. I'm like, you know what? I did the math. I'm like, the percentage of people who go from high school to play college b-ball is very small. And then from those who go from college b-ball to pros is even smaller. So I'm thinking, do I want to put all of those eggs in this one basket? All right. And I'm like, nah.
Well, were you getting recruited at all? Were you getting recruited?
We had some scouts and we had one person who was kind of interested and kind of wanted to meet with my parents and everything else. But I was like, I was so like, I want to say I didn't give it a chance, right? I didn't pursue anything. When people wanted to talk to me, I was like, because I already had my mind made up, right? Like, I'm like, okay, this is not the basketball, athletics thing is not the path for me. The going to college and getting an education, getting a degree is the thing for me. But funny enough, I get to college, right? University of Maryland, but basically, I lived in College Park with my mom.
Wait, stop. Hold that, because you already told me where you went, but. Hold that thought for a second.
Yep.
I want to go backwards a tiny bit because I forgot to ask you this question I just realized I did. And I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Here at Ardan Labs, we believe in empowering companies to reach their full potential through innovative technology solutions. Trusted by small startups and Fortune 500 companies alike, we specialize in high-performance software consulting, training, staffing, development, and now AI. With over 14 years of experience, Ardan Labs has trained over 30,000 engineers and served over 1,000 companies worldwide. Whether you're mastering Go, Rust, Kubernetes, Terraform, or blockchain, we're your strategic partner for performance-grade solutions. Let's elevate your tech journey together. Reach out to Ardan Labs today.
Do you remember when your parents told you were moving to the United States when you were 15? And kind of, what was that initial reaction you had? Excited, sad, nervous, like confused? Do you remember that
It was pure excitement and pure joy because I had only heard about the United States or seen like movies and films that referenced it and everything else, but I knew it was by some definition better than what we had. And mind you, I didn't live in poverty, and we were okay. But to me, it was a chance, right? It was an opportunity. It was like, I knew my mind was made up, right? Even before we left, I'm like, wow, I'm going to America. This is like the land of opportunity, right? So immediately I was like, okay, this is exciting. I can't wait.
And your friends, what were your friends like? They were excited for you? Jealous?
Most were excited. Most were like, oh, when you get there, you got to do this, you got to try that, whatever it is. I did there. Like, most were excited. Some, I never heard from again, even before I left. So, maybe there was some jealousy there. Who knows? But again, when you're a teenager and if you know that your friend is moving on to, by some definition, a better situation and you're not, if you're not fully developed yet, up there, so you might start to take that, too hard and think it has something to do with you, right? So, there was some of that, but, it is what it is.
So I've never been to Haiti, though. Living here in Miami, we get occasional news coming out of Haiti, especially over the years with the hurricanes and the latest thing with the overthrow of the government. And in fact, it's just weird because they'll talk about it for 2 weeks and then it like disappears, and so you have no idea which is horrible. So I've never been there. I've been to the Dominican Republic, which is on the other side of that big mountain.
Island, right? Yep.
But I heard these stories over and over again when I first moved to Miami from New York in '94, where people would come from Cuba and they would walk into a supermarket and be completely overwhelmed because it wasn't a matter that there was ketchup on the shelf. There were 20 different brands of ketchup on the shelf. Like in Cuba, it was, is there ketchup today? Here, it's like, which ketchup do I buy?
Right.
Again, I've never been to Haiti, but did you have any of that sort of experience on the, say, plenitude of options that this country provides?
It was most of my experience really with like, say, sort of a abundance versus not, right? Like, again, let's sort of contextualize this with this supermarket situation, right? So typically I would go to like an outdoor market, right? These days, in the States, people think, oh, that's kind of boutique-y, that's that's an experience,
like
right?
the bodega kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, over there, that's just day-to-day business, right? You go to the market, right, and you have everybody selling everything from a potato they just dug out the ground to charcoal. I mean, that you just walk and you get what you need, and people carry things on their heads all the time, whatever it is, right? So that was my experience of the shopping experience supermarket. So when I came here to the States, yeah, you betcha. I walk into any store, even a 7-Eleven. I'm like, whoa, this is overwhelming. There's like so much stuff. It's all nicely wrapped. Obviously there are some those things in Haiti too, obviously, but that wasn't a typical experience for me, at least not as a little kid, right?
Yeah, no, dude. I had lunch with this guy that had just recently came from Cuba. We went to Five Guys. Okay, have you ever been to Five Guys?
Yeah.
So we get the peanuts, right? We get the peanuts because we're waiting for our burgers. He takes the peanut, shell and all, and throws it into his mouth and starts eating it. And I scream in the store, "Wow, what are you doing?" He goes, "In Cuba, we don't waste anything." And my brain just went like,
wow.
Like I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know if I needed to feel guilty or crazy. Like it was, I'll never forget. These are dumb little things that I'll never forget because it did show how privileged I was that I was born in this country. Even if you're lower middle class, you still had more than anybody in Cuba at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. It's all relative, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to go to university. You've decided that basketball isn't going to be the track in university. You want to study. You want to do something with computers. You're not 100% sure. What schools are you kind of looking at? You already told us you ended up going to the University of Maryland, but
yeah, was
that the school? That's it.
That was sort of the number one school, and it was partly for two reasons. One, it was in state, right? Again, I'm not gonna go to my parents, right, and say, hey, like, I need you to try and come up with exorbitant amounts of money for tuition for out of state school. That was off the table. Matter of fact, college, right? Paying for college was never a thing that I never assumed my parents would do for me. Like that wasn't a thing, right? So basically, the way my mom specifically, when I talk about my parents, so it was just my mom. Like my father, when basically I hadn't seen him for many years prior, through no fault of his own, but that's a different story. The sort of the assumption was that, okay, I brought you here, right? This is my mom, right? I brought you here. You have all these opportunities available to you. Now it's up to you. Right. And then from then on, she was just hands off. Right. She didn't check whether I did homework or not. She didn't check, like how I was doing in school. She was like, OK, I put food on the table and roof over your head. The rest is up to you. Right. And I was like, OK, that is it. That's fine. Right. So, getting my first job or making money, the pocket money, anything like that. That was all on me. Like paying for college and figuring out how I was going to do that. That was all on me. All these things were just, basically expectations, right? Of that basically.
All right, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yep.
Because I have two questions, and you're not going to be able to answer them exactly, but maybe this is a conversation you have with your mom later on. If you were messing up, if you had not taken that responsibility seriously and you were making big mistakes, it would be interesting to know if your mom would have stepped in or just let you completely spiral out. And I'm wondering, is this like a Haitian mom thing or is this Johnny's mom thing?
So I can answer the second first. The Johnny's mom thing and Haitian mom thing were pretty much in sync. They were in line, right? So, and the way she would have handled it, and even when I did sort of mess up, not necessarily in school, but in other ways, right? Some cultural validation or whatever it is. However, I messed up. The way she disciplined me was through corporal punishment, right? So even at the age of the last whooping I got from my mom was what? I was like 16 years old or something like that. I was like, Mom, come on. I'm bigger than you. Like, you're gonna take out your belt and start whooping me right now? Like, no, this has to stop, right? Like, so, the way culturally, the way we grew up, right? Even in schools, right? In elementary school, I remember, when I'd mess up, the teacher would walk around with a ruler, right? And then you had to put out your hand, knuckle, right? And they would smack you on the knuckle. Right. Even worse, in parents in Haiti, they would go to the market, buy specially braided, right, sort of a whipping, things to keep kids in line. Right. So the cultural sort of aspect of things, basically, I'm sure, we've sort of outgrown that these days, but that was the way, you kept your kids in line. So that's what my mother tried with me even at the age of 16. I was like, nah, we're not doing that. First of all, we're not in the right setting for this. Somebody's probably going to call the cops on you, right? Not me. I want to stay alive, but this is not the right place for that, right? So she had stepped in different ways, right? But the whole communication thing of sitting you down and talking to you, that is very much, to me, right? Because I've only seen it in America. That's a very much an American notion. Back then, it's corporal punishment, all the way.
Okay, dude. So I had the corporal punishment too. Okay. Point there is, I years later, I would make jokes with my mom about how she would beat us to keep us in line. She'd go, "Well, you turned out okay, didn't you?"
Right. Exactly.
And like, what are you supposed to say to that?
Nothing, honestly. Just keep it in.
What are you supposed to say to that?
Seek therapy like everybody else. Yep.
Okay, so you chose University of Maryland. You're going in as a freshman. I hope you're living away from home. You're living on campus at that point too.
No. Like, University of Maryland was literally 10 minutes away from my mother's house in College Park, right? So University of Maryland, it's like massive campus, right? They pretty much occupy all of downtown College Park, and we lived in a neighborhood, right? That was close enough. And it was basically, I could either walk to campus, it took me a good 25, 30 minutes, or take the bus. They had like shuttles that sort of went around the neighborhood. That was how I went to school. I couldn't afford, remember, college is on me. I gotta pay for that stuff, right? Whether it's through student loans or through work study or whatever I needed to do, but it was all on me. So I needed to keep expenses down, right? So it was just back and forth.
So the whole 4 years you were commuting.
No, so that's the fun part, right? So 1 year into, so I got into computer engineering program, right? Very competitive. I was super psyched that I got in.
Is that the college, like the college for computers at the university?
Yeah, so they basically had the different different schools, right?
Within
campus. So I got into the school that specialized in computer engineering. So they also did electrical engineering and some other engineering, but I got into computer engineering, right? So I got into that program thinking most of my time is going to be spent, like writing code, right? There was some of that. There was the natural, sort of intro to computer science classes. There was a programming oriented, writing software, like sort of in drivers and all that kind of thing, parts of the program. But a lot of it was on hardware and learning sort of how these things work. Electrical, even included courses from the electrical engineering program. So it was very hardware centric. I'm like, I don't think I really want, that's what I really want to do. I was really looking into, writing software instead, less on the hardware stuff. But around that same time, even before I switched programs, around that same time, there was a big demand for, websites and people who knew how to make them. So back then, if you could spell HTML, you could get a job, right? You could get a job.
If you could identify what the acronym meant, you could get a job.
Exactly. So I was like, maybe I should try. So I got my first job, my first paying job, first professional job as a web designer on campus, right? So I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And I went on to become, back then we used to call them webmasters, right?
Yeah.
I went on to get a webmaster job also on campus. Actually helped the
When you
design.
say on campus, with the school you were at, or some other businesses on campus?
No, at the school. So
Okay.
the school had a department whose
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
entire job was to help other departments, like set up their websites and all these things, right? So I worked for that department. So I got a chance to actually,
That's a
build.
good gig.
Yeah, it was a
That's a good
great gig.
gig.
It was a great gig.
It's a good gig.
I learned like design tools, Adobe Photoshop. That was like the main thing back then, to design things.
Do you remember what they
Um,
were paying you an hour? It must have been
oh,
minimum wage.
it was
What is
minimum
that? Like
wage.
$7 an hour? I don't even know what
Yeah,
minimum
it
wage
was something
back
like something like that. $6.50,
Uh,
$7 an hour.
But
Like,
you don't care. That's money
yeah, I
coming
don't
in.
care. I'm getting paid
Hey,
to do this. I'm like, people are paying me to do this. I'm like, I was just,
you
like,
could serve Roy Rogers chicken or do a website.
I'll do
Same
that,
thing.
right? Like, but I also I did that job, but I also needed extra cash, right? Again, all the
Yeah.
responsibility is on me. So I also learned. I also got a commercial driver's license. I got a CDL in order to drive the big buses, the big shuttles on campus and off campus.
So you took no loans for any of this. You were paying for your
Oh, I
credits.
took some loans, but it just
Oh,
wasn't
okay,
enough
okay.
to cover
Yeah.
everything,
Okay.
right?
So you got your
yes.
CDL license. You can drive a tractor trailer.
Not a tractor trailer. Those are different. They have a
Oh,
different
okay.
endorsement you need for that. But I can drive one of those giant buses, public commuter
Oh, the
buses you
Bubba's.
see. Yeah.
Okay.
I can drive those things. Well, maybe who knows? I need some refresher now.
So
But
you
yeah,
were
I
so
can
you
drive
were
those
you
things.
were doing like city level bus driving
Yeah.
while you were going to school, dude. That's
Yep.
crazy. You gotta have some pictures of you behind the wheel somewhere, bro.
I wish
With
I
the
wish I
hat.
did. I wish I did.
No, dude. You gotta have pictures, man.
I wish I did. I wish I did. I wasn't thinking
Oh,
ahead back then, right? But yeah, it was one of the oh the most fun and probably the most fun nights to drive on campus. It was also followed by the worst morning to drive on campus because the most fun nights were Thursday and Friday nights because I'm shuttling kids around to the local bars and everything else. And then like when I'm picking them up again at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they're like puking them on my bus. they're
and you
they're
gotta
like
clean it
rowdy.
out.
They're like, I mean, and then missing it. In the procedure, when my shift is done, I have to go hose down the bus full of puke, of college kids. It was,
I guess it's such a big campus that you wouldn't have seen the same kids over and over at some point where they were like, "Hey, Johnny," right?
yeah,
'Cause
yeah. It
it's
was,
just
it
a
was, it
big.
was a massive, yeah. Like University of Maryland, I see the main campus is it's just massive, right? It's just a lot of, thousands of kids. It's even grown larger now. So yeah, it was,
But your life couldn't just be school and work. I mean, I'd like to hope you had some fun and went out with friends and
Very,
had.
very little of that. Very, very little of that. I mean, I was maybe because I didn't try hard enough. Like, I think when I look back on my life, like maybe I was just too much of a loner. There were some things that I loved doing, and I couldn't wait to get to those things. Right, like everything else I did was in service of me getting the time to get to the things I love doing. Right, so that was mostly how I sort of navigated my life.
So in 4 years, you graduate with
No,
a
but that's the thing. Like I
B.
actually, that's what I
Uh-oh.
started. The plot thickens, right? So like before the end of my second year, like when I realized, hey, like I can get paid for this stuff, like not just on campus, but out in the world, I drop out and I go take on professional work, consulting work at first, but to get a full-time job, right? Writing, like making websites and
Okay,
writing
time out,
software. Yeah,
time out,
yep,
time
yep.
out. I'm actually really curious now about Haitian culture.
Mm-hmm.
If you were Cuban, I don't think they would have appreciated that because, from my experience here, right, like education is so important and critical that you dropping out of school not getting that degree would be, and I would feel almost the same way with my kid. I'd be like, get the degree, just get the piece of paper. It's so important to have it, especially today, right?
Yeah.
I have a nephew who doesn't have any paper and nobody wants to touch him for
Yeah.
any programming job right now, right?
Right.
So is your mom just still hands off and says, Johnny, it's your life, you do you? Or does she come back and say, Johnny's a mistake?
She didn't she wasn't she didn't step in hard, right? Only because she knew that I had a strategy, right? She basically she knew how much money I could bring in. She's like, okay, you seem to have this handled, right? And eventually I did go back and I did get my, Bachelor of Science, and I even got a master. So, and like you'll see both of those degrees just sitting on my shelf over there.
I want to talk about that, but let's get there because
right.
I do want to talk about that. So,
Right.
okay. So mom's not stepping in your way. She's not pleased, but you do you, boo. So you drop out of, you don't even start your second year, or were you already inside your second year when you dropped out?
Right.
Okay. And then you take this commercial job
Yep.
that's paying you $18,000 a year, right? Which is a lot of money. Now, you remember what your first salary was?
My first real paying job was at least 60K.
What? Dude, wait a second. You graduated high school in 98.
Yeah.
You did 99. In the year 2000,
Yeah.
without that college degree, you
Yeah.
drop out, and they're paying you 60 grand to build software, whatever that software is.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't drop out of school either. Dude. I mean, that's not.
I mean, the math was mathing back then. I'm like, listen, I can take advantage of this. I don't know how long this thing is gonna last, so I can get in now on the ground floor and see how far I can take it.
How did you find that job? Did it just
applied.
pop up and you? Yeah, but like, why were you even looking? Like, how does it come across your desk?
It's well, the back then, the internet full swing, right? There's like job boards and all these things, and I'm looking at my student loans, I'm looking at my debt, I'm looking at my life and what I can and can't earn, and I'm like, I have a skill set here, or at least I've started to develop one. Like, I should take advantage of this, right? So I'm literally like working myself into doing this thing, and by that time too, I'd already met my wife, and she was also encouraging, right, and helping me sort of.
You met
pursue
your
this.
wife in the university.
No, I met her. That's another thing. I also had a part-time job as a waiter at a Jewish retirement home, which is where I met my wife.
Oh my God, dude! You had so many. You're like, yeah, you have jobs everywhere, man.
Yes, indeed. I'm telling you, I was a
You got
man
like
on mission.
3-4 jobs. There was, I hope it's appropriate. There was a Saturday Night Live skit a long time ago where I don't know if the character was Haitian or not, or maybe it was just somebody who's African American, and they're asking the white guy how many jobs you have, and he says 1, and he asks the other guy, and he's like, I got 10 jobs, man. Maybe he was like Jamaican or something.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
I have to look at. I don't know if you ever remember that skit, but it was. I just remember the skit, and you got like 4 or 5 jobs going on at the same time, dude. I don't know how you fit it all in, even on a schedule.
And well, when you say, hey, like, how come you didn't have a whole lot of social life and whatever? That's why. Because
well, you did. It was just at work. You had a social life at all these different jobs. So you met your wife at one of these jobs at the waitering at a nursing home.
Yep.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I'd love to even just have your schedule at the time. I imagine you just stopped even doing homework at that point. I mean, I don't even know how you're doing it all.
Yeah, like I started basically with all these things going on. I started basically underperforming in school. I'm like, okay, something's gonna give, right? And I look at the potential for earning, and I'm like, okay, well, for now, it's gonna have to be school because I'm gonna give that up and go earn money. I can always come back, right? Pocket full of dollars and pay for my tuition and take care of myself. But right now, the opportunity is knocking, and I need to go after it.
But I'm guessing you quit all those jobs when you get this salary.
This new full-time job, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I also imagine that your imposter syndrome is hitting pretty hard, at least for the first month.
Absolutely. I was like, my peers at work were like, they seemed like they could just, they're typing so fast and everything else. I'm like, I'm still sort of, looking down at my keys to see what I'm doing, what I'm typing. They're like, they seem like they're like wizards and stuff. I was like I felt out of my depth. Absolutely.
Wow. So, but now your wife is saying, Johnny, you're making a lot of money. When we get married, it's go, Donnie. No. But how long are you at this job then? This job that you said?
I was at that job for a couple of years before I started looking for other jobs. Yeah. So
now, why did you do that? You got bored? It just there wasn't going to be any growth.
No, actually, from that job, this was like I had the
2000.
From that job, that's where I met the co-founders for the first company I started. Basically, I met there was one individual who worked in a different sort of area of that institution. And he learned that I was the one building, some of the web applications that we're using. And back then we were using like, Cold Fusion and building these kind of CMSs and everything else. So he learned that I was the one who not only, back then we didn't have a term for it. I was doing what today we call full stack development, right? So I was doing the HTML and CSS and all that work, and also building the backend and the databases and everything else, to service that work. So he found out that, oh, hey, like here's this guy who can do all these things, soup to nuts. Like we need somebody like that, right? For what we're planning. So it was him and another individual who was back in Boston at that point. He's like, hey, like I want you to,
But how did he find you? How did he know about you? Friends?
No. We worked at the same place. So he just worked in a different part of the business. So he found out who was building these things that he was using. And then he's like, hey, you gotta come meet with us and talk about, let's create this business together, right? So at that point, basically, 2.5 years in, I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity, but it has to be in Boston, right? So now, here I am now making really a pivotal move in my career, moving to Massachusetts, moving to Boston, right? To start this company.
Did you have to drop your salary a little bit? Because that's
of course, as a startup.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
We weren't get paid a whole lot, right? We needed to get clients, and because it was a service business, we're like a digital agency, right?
But you're still living at home. I know you're helping your mom out with rent and stuff, so it's not like you didn't have a cost that now you have a cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you decide you're going to move to Boston. You're all not going to live in the same flat over there, right? You're going to get your own place. Like, what's the first year arrangement for this startup in Boston?
So the first year arrangement was a little odd. I think I slept on on some couches early on. Eventually, I did get my own apartment and sort of try to establish myself, right? Eventually my then girlfriend, eventually wife, sort of moves up, to Boston to sort of help.
Once you realized it was real, once you realized this, but she was okay. I have to ask this question then. Was your wife going to university at that time, or she was just working full time?
Yeah, she was. When she was working, when we actually met, she was going through school, right? So she, eventually she finished her degree, and funny enough, she got her computer science degree.
So she was doing computer science too.
Yeah, she was doing computer science, but she didn't love like writing software, right? She was smart enough to do these things and learn about these things, but her passion was elsewhere, right? So, but she did her degree before I did, but like years before I did, but eventually she moved to.
So then everything in Boston's sort of working out. You got through the first year. I imagine you got at least your salary back. She's now going to go to Boston with her degree. You're going to live together for the first time. That's always fun. Yeah.
We had an apartment back before she moved. We had an apartment.
Oh, you did.
So
okay.
we had some experience living together prior to the move. Right. This was like during my first job. We had basically, once I was making enough money to like not live at home with my mom, like that was the first thing we did. Got ourselves an apartment and did our own thing.
Right, but now you're paying. Well, I imagine she was working. When I hear these stories of somebody going to another city to do this, my brain immediately just focuses on there's 2 rents to pay now, right? Like how are we going to make these 2 rents? Like I don't know why my brain always goes into the logistics of can we cover this? Can we cover this? If we can, okay, go do it. If we can't, so there's stress on that too. Plus now it's a long distance relationship and stuff, but it all works out. She moves up to Boston. How long do you stay with the startup? Is what happens in the startup?
I stayed with the startup. Honestly, I stayed with the startup for 10 years, a decade.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's not even a startup anymore. How many, forgetting why you left, but in that, at the peak of this startup, how many employees were there at some?
We had, by the time I left, so I left only because after a decade, we weren't making the progress that I had hoped for.
What
right?
was the product that you guys built?
So we
10
were a
years is a
digital
long
agency.
time.
So that was
Oh, right, a
you did it
digital
on the
agency.
head, right? It wasn't a product that we were building. So we were building products for other people, right? We didn't have one of our own. So we didn't have recurring revenue. So every dollar we earned, we had to work for. This is the services business. This is the big disconnect when people say, "Hey, I'm gonna go build websites for a living. I'm gonna have my own company." You don't realize that if you're not working, you're not earning, right? So that's why it's better, in my view, right? It's better to build a product that you can sell. People can swap a credit card and buy it from you than it is to actually work for every dollar as a consultant or something like
If you're not making money while you sleep, you're not making money.
that. You know,
That-
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
the bottom.
exactly.
Now, in a service agency like that, you could be making money on heads. You can be making 20% on every head that's working while you're sleeping. But it's a big babysitting job at the end of the day. But I imagine you guys at some level did that. You had N number of people on client projects. You were making money on their heads.
Yeah, it just wasn't enough. It was never so. It was never enough, and we never got far enough. It would be like making 2 steps forward, 1 step back, especially because we were trying to basically big game hunting. We were going after large companies, the Ciscos of the world, the Marriotts. You know, we had big contracts. But anybody who's ever worked with the enterprise will tell you, especially if you're a smaller company, it takes them forever to pay you. It takes them forever.
Yes, it's
You
a
will send them like a
babysitting job.
net 30 invoice. They'd be like, nah, we'll pay you in 90 days. And what are you going to do? You're the smaller guy, right? What are you going to do? Right? So and with enough of these things compounding our costs, sort of outpacing our revenue, like
You got to pay your people too, and if you
You
don't,
gotta-
this
that-
is Ardan, right?
Yeah,
We got to
yeah,
have
that-
cash flow every year, every month
Exactly,
to pay.
exactly. And I can't tell you how many times, right, I'd have to go face my, then wife, right, to basically say, hey, so the executive team, of which I'm a part, is not getting paid this month, right? We had monthly payroll. We're not getting paid this month because we don't have enough cash in the bank. We need to cover our people that work for us. We need to pay them. So we can't get paid this month, right? So imagine having that conversation, not once, not twice, but at least half a dozen times, right?
Yeah.
Within a year's period. And at least like try to do that year after year after year. Eventually, you're like, okay, we have a problem, right? And Johnny, you have to face that music. It's not at this point it shouldn't be this hard. So it was a very hard, very difficult thing.
Yeah,
I mean, you put
after
10 years into
10
something.
years, after 10 years, you should have had enough. I would have said you should have had enough cash in the bank to cover a couple of months worth of net 90 not getting paid, right?
Right.
It's an interesting business too, because especially for a company like that, you could land a really big deal and you wouldn't be able to fill all the positions right away because you couldn't pay people.
Right. Right. It's a very hard business model. Very hard. Very hard.
And you can't let the client know that you can't fill the 10 heads that they want tomorrow, not because you couldn't put people there, just because you couldn't pay them until 3 months from now when they start paying you. Like, you don't think about these things.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
They
wild.
don't care. They don't care. They don't care. And and if they smell weakness, they give the contract to another agency. Right.
But this is interesting because you don't necessarily have a failing business. You have a cash flow problem.
Right.
It's probably good you're not looking to get into some debt to cover payroll, like, because there are companies there to give you the short-term cash you need to cover payroll, but you have to be disciplined enough to finally get paid to pay that off, right?
Right.
And you do that, but so you don't have a failing business, so you decide. Okay, two things, I guess, questions now, because this gets super interesting. Do you decide to then go and work for somebody else, and then at a high general level, because I don't want to get into details, like what is the arrangement you make with this company that you founded 10 years and been a part of for 10 years? You're not just going to walk away from your equity either. So,
Well, that was the thing, right? So to your point, we did get into some debt, right? Because some months we just couldn't they didn't have enough to cover payroll, so we had to get some debt, right? In the company, and basically in exchange for me walking away, basically it was just I give up my equity, right? So that I don't take on, right, walk away with some of that debt, a portion of that debt, whatever percentage of the company I owned. So
and they were okay with
traded
that.
off. Yeah.
So that was it. You get nothing, but you also have no debt.
Exactly.
That's interesting. It's interesting. So I would have felt a loss there, almost
Oh, I did.
almost like I'm going to say it this way because I don't know how else to say it. Almost like a death, right? You probably had to go through the 5 points
Stages of
grieving,
grief.
whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I never understood that until I got divorced. And somebody said to me early on the divorce is like death, and you're going to go through those 5 stages of death. And until you do, you're not going to be mentally well. And I laughed at them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that divorce is 100% like a loss of like death.
Yeah.
And until I got through it all, I wasn't ever mentally built again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that would have been almost the same thing because that was like
Yeah.
your baby for a decade,
Yeah.
and you literally had to just bury it, right? And got nothing. Oh my! I mean, that had to be tough, dude.
Yeah, it was incredibly hard, especially knowing that today, even today, right? Some of the software I've built is still in operation, delivering value, right, for customers, and it's incredible. I
So
know
the
this because
agency's
every once in a
still
while I'll
around.
get a random email from some system that I built a while ago. I'm like, oh, this thing must be still be working because I use my Gmail account as a test account for some other system, right? So it's incredibly hard and sort of it pained me to do that, but at the end of the day, by then I had my first child. We were looking at another, and it was just like I can't face my family in this situation. Like I had to.
But 20 years later, is the agency still around?
Yeah, eventually they got acquired, right? And that helped them get out of the situation they were in. But yeah, they got acquired. A lot of folks that were there at the time I was there are still there, basically building an entire career, and I'm super happy for them. Every once in a while I'll talk to my then co-founders and everything else, and we're still on very much good terms and everything else. So yeah, I'm very happy they did well. But it was something I needed to do, and honestly I don't regret it. Right, it definitely hurts, but I don't regret doing it. It was the right thing.
Yeah, that was my question. I wanted you to be honest now, because hindsight is 2020. So,
Right.
like, I was wondering, do you feel like I should have just waited another year? I should have just waited another, but and this is the thing I say to people all the time. Like, you want to start a business and you want to do something, it's better to have failed and know it failed, or better to have gone through the experience either way than to wonder for the rest of your life, sort of what if, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What if? So, my first business that I started in 2004 failed miserably, bro. I mean, we can have an entire podcast on that. But I'm not sitting back wondering what if, right? Like,
Right.
I know. So there's value in that. So where do you go work then? So you cut this deal. Definitely at the time there's a loss, but it's the best thing for you at that moment. Timing is everything for you and your wife, and you're starting your family. But you got to go work for somebody.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough. So where do you go work?
So
Oh, wait, and this has to be what, 2012, 2013?
2013. Yeah, just
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I then took a sort of a principal software engineer job at a local at a company in basically still in Boston. So basically, I spent, after leaving a company after 10 years, I still spent the next 3 years in Boston before relocating back to Maryland. But 2 of those years was spent basically at this sort of a merchandising software company, right? So basically, if you ever walk into sort of a AT&T store or something like that, and you see how displays are positioned and everything else, things on the wall, none of that stuff happens by accident, right? Somebody doesn't walk in and decide what they're gonna put somewhere, right? Software tells them, hey, you need to put this display on today, take it down tomorrow. You need to put this model on today, take it down next week, right? All that stuff, right, needs to be
So
managed.
wait. The person that works in the store opens up a screen and it tells them
It tells
how
them
to
what to
rearrange.
wear. Yep,
But
exactly.
but somebody behind the scenes is filling that information by hand, I imagine. There's no algorithm.
That's the software I worked on, right? To basically, there were algorithms for placing different kinds of things in different places.
What?
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea
Completely
that
automated.
existed.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I've heard of software like the franchise that has the Olive Garden, where they'll tell the chefs exactly what to start cooking when, so the meal comes out.
Right.
And I always thought that was cool, but I had no clue
Yeah. I mean,
that like an
like AT&T was one of our
wow.
customers, and you're talking to the scale of a national retailer like that, right? Like you can't do that stuff one at a time. There's no some one person pulling up this store at this city and trying to arrange things. No, it has to be done in mass, right? And they have to take into account different stores. They don't have all the same footprint, same configuration, so all that stuff had to be automated.
What? Dude,
Yeah,
that's mind blowing to me that
yeah,
there's
yeah.
software that, dude, I forget it. My brain just shut down. But that's for like, I would call an AT&T store a boutique store. I mean, maybe you got 200 products in there, right? But like, that's not happening at a Best Buy.
Oh,
Do you think that's happening at a Best
Best Buy
Buy?
was one of our customers too.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. We did it for all the major big box stores. Yeah, all the major retailers.
Like a Home Depot too?
I don't think we had a Home Depot. We did have. Yeah, I don't think we had a Home Depot, but I want to say we had an Ames or something. Where yeah, we could do
Oh,
anything that required placement on a shelf somewhere. Like the software could work for.
you know, it's one of my pet peeves. I don't go to stores. I go to Walmart. I go to my supermarket, Publix. Everything else I buy online, dude. I don't want to
Right.
go to a store.
Right.
But when I walk into like my Publix supermarket, okay, and they move the product somewhere else, I lose my shit, bro. I'm like,
Right.
freaking finally memorize where everything is. Damn it!
Where's the spam?
And-
Where did it put the spam?
I haven't eaten spam in about 18 months because of my doctor, dude. So
Yeah.
I'm jonesing. If my blood tests come back good this year, I'm gonna treat myself to a
Back,
little spam.
back into the spam.
But what's nice is like just about every store is laid out, even like in Alabama. So there's a couple differences here and there, but wow, dude, I had no idea. So you did that for 3 years.
I did that
You
for
worked
2
on
years. I did
stuff.
that for 2 years. Like the final year in Boston, I actually joined another startup, which was actually you're gonna get a kick out of this. This was when boot camps, developer boot camps, were becoming all the rage. Right. So I had done, while during my 10, 12 years, prior, I'd go to meetups, eventually I learned how to, do presentations, technical presentations. I learned how to do talks. I learned how to run user groups and everything else. So, by that time I had some teaching experience, right? And I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed, teaching others. So by that time I'm like, okay, this startup, wants to bring me on as one of the teachers. Right. So I did that for like a whole year. Right. And then basically we eventually parted ways. But, I did that for a whole year where for that whole year, I did nothing but teach other people how to do Ruby and Rails software development.
Was it like at night classes or during the day? Or
No,
it
this was like
everything?
full on. This is like a full time, like a
Wow.
boot camp kind of situation. So people are in there from morning till night. Sometimes they stay over, right? Like basically, I would sort of come in early in the morning, like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I wouldn't leave till like 10, 11 o'clock at night because the students are there, right? Mind you, this is like boot camp era, like in full blown, situation.
But
kind
there's
of
no
thing.
stress, dude. I mean, that's a complete decompression at that point, right? You have no stress on product deadlines and things. If your stress is just making sure that these people are learning and
So
graduating.
my stress came. My stress was self-induced because I'm like, man, like when you have like I was on average, right? Basically, I taught 3 cohorts of about 40 students each. So when you have 40 students a pop, right, that are coming to you with all kinds of problems and that variations and difficult technical issues, things I'd never run into before. Like I'm like, then my imposter syndrome is in full blown mode, right? Because I'm like, I'm supposed to be the teacher. I'm supposed to know, right, everything about the thing I'm trying to teach you right now, right? So when they're coming to me and we have to sit down and figure it out, like I went through such this was another one of those pivotal moments for me in my career where just knowing, right, a programming language or framework or here and then, that doesn't equip you to be a trainer or teacher. Knowing a syntax about something doesn't teach you nothing about how to actually teach it, how to actually relay information to people. So I had to basically really learn. I had to read books that teachers read to figure out, okay, how does teaching actually work, right? Like how do people retain information? How do people learn? Like do you have visual learners, auditory learners, like people who like text? text. Like how does teaching actually work? And oh man, patience and empathy, all these things you have to develop to be a teacher. I mean, people look at teachers and they think, that's nothing. I could do that, right? Like, man, you have no idea. You have no idea what the life of a teacher is like, right? And I only got a taste of it, like, doing that for a whole year. But yeah, man, it was challenging, but it was fun.
But now it's like 2016. You've done this year. You decide you're going back to Baltimore.
Yep.
Is it you just wanted to be around family, or you found?
Yeah, that was the main driver, right? And basically what allowed me to do that was actually when, like, a year prior I had been exposed to Go, right? This is where Go comes in the picture. A year prior I had been exposed to Go. Actually, our mutual friend of ours, Mark Bates, right, was in the Ruby community. We're both in the Ruby community, and he started getting into Go, and he sort of brought me along. And then I actually got right before I moved to Maryland, right? Because at that point basically I had three kids, and we were like, hey, we want them to be around family. Lord knows we could use the support, right? Because we had nobody in Boston, right? So we decided we're gonna move, and I'm like, okay, I really love Go. I need to find a company that's gonna pay me to do this, right? And ideally a remote-friendly company. And that's where I took my first job writing Go code for Influx, InfluxDB,
Yeah.
So
Was Corey there at the time then?
Corey was we overlapped by maybe a month or two. Right,
Okay.
But yeah, Corey did his time there. Mark Bates was was the one who referred me. We worked together on the same team and everything else. So basically I relocated while at the job at Influx, and thankfully they were very remote friendly. So that's what allowed me to do that transition pretty smooth.
Yeah, completely different tech too. I mean, at this point now you're writing databases. You went from a lot of front end website stuff to like hardcore back end database stuff in Go. Dude. What a learning experience. How long were you at Influx?
I did it for about 8 months or so. So it was relatively short tenure. Yeah.
So what happened? It was at the time that the company got, I think I remember the company got VC money.
There was
entire
some
culture
restructuring.
changed.
Yeah.
It was like
concern.
the best company to work for. They raised some money and everything went like as it always does, culturally, because when you tasted what you had and now it's changed, it's different if you come in after.
Right.
When you come in before these situations, and I want to be fair to Influx. Once the VC money comes in, you have to change. The VCs are doing it. The company now has got to be different. It can't be in startup mode anymore.
Right.
I'm going through some of that now with some stuff where I'm just like, we've got to get out of startup mode at this point. Let's start transitioning now, so it's not going to be harder later, right? Because I've seen this already. So, but for the people that were there in startup mode, this is almost traumatizing. So, so where do you go after 8 months at Influx then?
After Influx, let me see. I'm looking at my LinkedIn profile because I start to forget these things after a while. I did this is where I actually went to a nonprofit. I needed to find a remote friendly company, right?
You wanted remote friendly because you just wanted to be at home to help with the kids? In part, like I was willing to take a job. Like by that time I had relocated to Maryland, right? I was willing to take a job. If that's the only choice I had, I was willing to take a job, having to go to the office. But I'm like, remote is kind of becoming a thing, and I really want to keep writing Go code, right? So like, let me find. So the only thing I had to do was like, hey, I'm, my time at Influx is done. I'm looking for my next thing. I love writing Go code. I like to do that, and immediately, like almost like the same day, right? A few people reach out, and one of the people who reached out happened to work at a nonprofit organization, also Boston based, where they're doing a ton of Go, right? I'm like, Go at a nonprofit, right? Like being innovative and avant-garde like that, sign me up, right? So I spent the next 3 years, just about the next 3 years as a principal software engineer, building, infrastructure and writing Go code every day, and it was a blast. It was a blast. That's cool, but that now takes you to like what, 2019? Believe it or not, we're still like 5 years out from today.
Yep.
So
from then. You ready for what comes next?
Yep.
From then, I took a job at Heroku. That's when things get interesting.
You were at Heroku?
I was at Heroku.
Dude, I had no idea. Were you there when? Oh God, he's gonna kill me because I can't. I had some friends over there. God, I haven't talked to him in so long. My brain shut down. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I took the job at Heroku. I'm forgetting his name as well. I think we're probably thinking of the same person. You know, big fella,
Yeah,
ponytail.
yeah. I'm looking in the Go Bridge.
Right, exactly.
I feel so bad right now, but
I know, me too.
I haven't talked to him in so long, dude.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a while. Yeah,
Hold on,
but
that's right.
we're thinking about the same person.
Edward Muller.
Ed Muller, that's right. That's right.
So you were there with Ed.
Yeah, I was there with Ed. Yeah, he reached out and was like, "Hey, this is what we're doing. You know, we're looking for SREs." Mind you, I had no idea what an SRE was.
So
you
you're
know,
moving now from development into an ops.
into a
sort
more
of
of an ops kind of
role.
role. Yeah, exactly. So
Did
basically, I had
that
to.
seem interesting to you just because it was different? Did you, or you had no idea you weren't going to be writing a lot of code anymore?
I loved because a lot of the work I did at the startup because I was sort of the effectively the chief technology officer. I had various roles over the 10 years, right? You know, I was a tech lead, you know, I was the lead developer, director of engineering, CTO, all that stuff. But all of that throughout all that time, the person who managed infrastructure, who deployed infrastructure for our customers, right, when they didn't have one of their own, I was the one building and operating these systems, setting up virtual machines, you know, working with Amazon to set up cloud environments and all these things. I did all that stuff. I had to learn to do these things, right?
Did you enjoy it? Because I hate
enjoy
ops.
it, right?
I hate ops. I will get a job delivering pizza if I have to pay somebody to do it.
Right. No. It's actually I mean, the tooling nowadays is so much better than what was available back then, right? Like you have things like Terraform now, like no such thing back then. You know, you have lots of great tooling now, right? So then when the SRE opportunity came along, you know, there was a lot of focus on observability. Open telemetry was just on the cusp of being a thing, right? Like there was a lot of tools, a lot of technology, a lot of frameworks came into being. I'm like, hey, this is a good time to kind of get into this SRE thing. And Google made the whole sort of thing popular, right, with their book on sort of how they run their operations and everything else. So here I am with an opportunity to become an SRE at one of the most beloved companies in our industry. I'm like, I am jumping on that opportunity, like, you know, right now. Where do I sign,
Wow.
right? So yeah, basically, I spent about 3.5 years at Heroku, which is owned by Salesforce. Yeah, it was another set of formative years in sort of my career. I just realized the other day that like I've been actually paid by people to write software for the last 26 years. It's been 26 years since I've been doing this.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And I got 10 years on you, so wait. I got to retire, dude.
Oh man.
Hey, have you heard the announcement this week from a company called System Initiative? Adam Jacob, I think, is the co-founder. Look this up because it's apparently, I've tried to read the blog post. It's really long, so I haven't gotten through it all. This is apparently a new paradigm to sort of ops. So System Initiative. I reached out. I'm going to try to get Adam on the show to kind of talk about it. But I think he was also the co-founder of Chef or something. So something to look at.
Yeah. I see it. Yeah, I found it. Yeah.
So, okay. So you're at Heroku for like 3-something years. I like that you stay at companies for those long periods of time. You're not really trying to be a and there's nothing wrong with going changing jobs every year either. I used to think there isn't anymore, right? Like that's the only way you can really increase your salary is by jumping. So if you're not getting paid enough, move. You do it, right? But now we're getting into like 2019, just 2020, right? When you leave there. So now we're dealing with the next 4 years, and we're dealing with a pandemic, which is about to kind of come hit.
Yep.
So why do you leave Heroku, and then where do you go?
Startup. Like I'm the thing is
And the startups, man.
I tell my wife about it. Like, she's like you in another startup, you know.
I can't believe your wife even allows it at this point. The startups are risky.
I don't think
Startups
she let
are
me get another
risky,
one.
man. I mean,
It is.
You tend to have to take salary cuts. You have to work a bunch of hours.
Yep.
You're putting yourself in really risky in terms of a family, healthcare, all that situations. But Johnny, that's where you are a startup guy. So what's the startup?
I love startups, and it comes with all those things. But I think anybody who's ever done a startup can tell you that's where they probably feel the most alive, right? And like, for better or for worse, right? Like, whether it's like, crap, am I gonna make payroll, this week? Or, to you getting that big deal, with that company, or you setting up, like a Stripe integration, and you can actually see every time somebody swaps a card and buys your software. I mean, it's some of the most gratifying and most scary things at the same time, right? And like, I maybe you could call me an adrenaline junkie, I don't know, but I love the experience that a startup brings. And the thing is, like, I don't like to sort of be bucketed in any one thing. Like, I've had such a long career. I'm so grateful for it. I love to mentor. I love to run a business. I love to, and I love to look at the books, right? I love to, write software, write infrastructure, like all the hats that I get to wear at a startup. I love all of that stuff, right? So I don't want to be just writing code in a very specific thing and then call it a day and go home and go find something else to do, right? So I love all of that experience, right? So I tend to go back, between large, like stable employment and, some of the more.
Yeah, you start jonesing for it. But before you talk about this startup.
Yep.
Do you have your 2 degrees at this point? Because you never touched on when you kind of went back to university.
I did both degrees remotely online. Like, the only time I ever showed up at the schools was to pick up my diploma on stage.
So I want to ask one quick question about that.
Yeah.
Did you do that out of? Okay, I'm going to throw ideas, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Did you do that out of guilt? Did you do that out of desire? Did you do that out of need? Or did you do it because your wife had the diploma on the wall and you were just tired of not seeing yours? So I make that joke because Allie has a diploma on the wall that's like 3 times the size of mine. And, we're always like kind of joking, especially the girls in the house. Like, yeah, but look at mom's diploma compared to yours, right? So that's the only reason I brought that joke up. But I'm kind of curious, like, what was the motivating factor to go back to school? Because it's a lot of work. And I would love to do it, but I just don't have the capacity.
For me, so basically, I'm going to sort of close the loop here, full circle back to what I was mentioning before around opportunity, right? When I came to the States, for me, one of those opportunities was to get an advanced degree, right? So I stopped going to school when I did because I was sort of pursuing financial stability, but I didn't deprioritize, or I didn't stop caring about having a degree, right? I was the first in my family line to have an advanced degree, right? And it's something that I took to heart, right? So to have that degree, and even to go on to get a master's, to me, these felt like the first one. It was something that I had to do because I would have been the first one in my family to have one, right? So I did it, and I'm very proud of that. The second one I did, again, out of probably more of, to try and emit a signal, at least on my resume, or anybody that looked close to show that, yes, I am competent, right? Not only do I have the years of experience, but I have the school knowledge. If that's what you're looking for, if that's a signal you're looking for to believe that I'm a competent individual, right? Then yes, I'm going to check these boxes for you. So I got the master's because really more for that, because I'll tell you, I went through that 3-year process, and I can say that maybe a quarter of it was sort of new material for me, that I wasn't exposed to in one way or another, right? Because I had been doing this kind of work for so long, right? And so I had seen a lot of things. So going through the homeworks and I mean, it took more effort to actually write, the papers and everything else to sort of communicate the knowledge that I had than it actually was to actually learn the thing that I was being taught, right? So to me, it was more of the first one was really I needed to do it. The second one was more of I needed to send a signal, right, when somebody's looking for that signal.
I sort of love what you just said there because you were basically this is what I kind of took from that, and now I'm not going to go back to school, but I would maybe. It was a way of certifying the knowledge you had in your head, a way of an outwardly sign of what you knew, right? That you wouldn't be able to show any other way. other than having that master's degree.
Yep.
And I never thought about a master's degree in that sort of way before, right? It's like, I know all this stuff. I should have a degree up there, but they're not going to let me have it until I dump my brain for the next 3 years. So I'm just going to dump my brain to show everybody that, you know what, dude, that's really, God, I love when these things happen during the show because it kind of alters my brain a little bit. I just can't. I'm at a point in my life where if you tell me I have to be somewhere every day or every other day at this time, it's just not going to happen. My life is just too fluid, and that becomes stressful for me. It becomes so stressful for me. I just can't. I can plan out the week, and I'll make sure I'm there. But starting to plan out next week gets really complicated.
I mean, but at this point, I mean, anybody has, all somebody has to do is just, Google your name, and they will find plenty of evidence, right, to your capabilities. So, I don't think you need to prove anything on anybody at this point.
Maybe at my age right now, where I'm trying to get to, right? But I love this idea that if you're in your 30s right now, or you're in your 40s right now, where you're absolutely going to work for another 15 years, especially in the job market we have today, that you might be thinking that a master's degree is going to be a lot of work and it's going to be hard. But you might already know, like Johnny said, 80% of the material, it's just a matter of going through the motions, and it's only going to help you. It's not going to hurt you at the end. So this is advice that I would, moving forward, want to give somebody who's in their mid-30s to, say, mid-40s, right? Who doesn't have the degree but is talking about it. I wouldn't say it unless somebody said, this is why you should get it. Right. And this is why it's going to be more tedious than anything else. And once you have it, you're going to feel this overwhelming sense of relief and accomplishment. And you're going to have another ring of security around your CV that's going to push you to, like, it's beautiful. Like, beautiful the way it's beautiful, dude. Okay. So tell me, we're almost out of time. I'm going to extend this because I want to finish a few things here. What is the name of this startup that you're starting now? I think it was 2019. You're starting this startup,
right? So yes, the name of the startup is called Skilltype. It's a very niche kind of product. So if you've
where you are now.
Yeah, Skilltype. Yep.
Okay, so 19. So you've been at this already. You've been at this already for
4 years.
For 5 years.
Yeah, it was part-time in the beginning, and then I joined full-time afterwards. So it's pretty much people don't think about this, but libraries, right? The actual places, people. I'm not sure how many people do that anymore. They go into a library, you borrow a book, right? Like, so the librarians, especially on sort of research institutions, right? If you have an academic library, say at a Harvard or Princeton or some institution like MIT, right? Those libraries, they tend to be sort of a special kind of libraries, right? The kind of people that work there, the librarians that work there, are trained and equipped to help people doing research on campus, right? They're trained to understand and work with those individuals. Maybe it's a PhD student, or maybe it's staff, or a professor, or whatever it is. They're doing research and they need help, right, from librarians at those institutions to help them sort of progress in their research and whatnot. So those people, those librarians, they need training. Right? Just like everybody else who has professional development, right? They need professional development as well. So basically, my co-founder identified a sort of a niche, right, to serve that population, and basically, came up with the idea. And I call him co-founder, but I really, he started it, and I joined him later on. So I'm not sure if that makes me a co-founder or not. But we've been doing this for a while, and sort of I'm a pseudo co-founder. But in any case, basically, we've been sort of creating this platform, right, for those people, and have been doing it. And we have some of the most prestigious names in the field, right, large institutions in college and universities as our customers, and we're trying to do the best we can despite the current market, despite the current environment. We're trying to do the best we can to keep it going.
Is your customer the university? Is your customer the individual librarian?
you're probably going to be familiar with this concept too. So the person who buys from us is not the person who uses the software, right? So the people we're talking to and making a sale to, right? The directors, of the library, the dean of libraries, all those people that we're talking to, and basically presenting the business value and why you need to invest in your staff and your people, right? They understand the value. They might see a demo here and there, but when they sign that check, that's it. They don't use the software, right? They now hand it over to others who would then have to sort of onboard their people and all that stuff, so that our users are not the ones who are buying it.
So would this extend to a high school librarian, or is it really at the level of a, say, university?
There's nothing about the software that prevents it from being used in those settings. It's all about the kind of content you wish to aggregate, the sort of vocabulary you want to use, right? We have a mixture of academic libraries and public libraries, right? Florida, right? Broward County actually is one of our customers, right? So
Nice.
basically, it's not strictly academic libraries.
Brilliant, dude. What an interesting. So this is how messed up my brain is. So the first thing my brain said is, well, there's a limited number of universities on the planet. So he's got a limited amount of revenue he can generate. And then my brain went, Bill, why are you being such a dumbass? The number of universities is so large that even if he only got 10% of that, it's still like amazing. So why do you do that, Bill? Like, why was that my first thought, right?
Yeah. There is a finite, addressable market, right? But at the same time, the way I usually tell people this, I'm like, look, I'm not one of those people, entrepreneurs who steps into a field and say, you know what, I'm gonna disrupt everything. I'm gonna change the world. I have no such aspirations. I dream big, but I dream responsibly. I would say I dream within reachability, right? So I'm not trying to, like you said, even if we got 10% of all universities across the world, that's a pretty good business, right? That's a pretty good business. And if I want to retire off of that business, I can. And so it's not. I'm not trying to change the world. I'd like to think that we do by helping people learn. And that's one of the sort of the core things that makes Johnny. I love to see people learn. I love to teach. If I can have a hand in it, that's even great. When people come to me and says, hey, I was at one of your workshops in one of your classes, learning Go last year at GopherCon. Now I have a job at company so-and-so doing this. Hearing these stories, to me, that's what moves me forward. So if I can write software to help people do that, and be able to feed my family and live comfortably, man, sign me up for that any day of the week.
And to have a guitar in the back wall.
And have a guitar in the back that I don't know how to play.
Okay, no, you weren't supposed to say that, dude. Kevin,
I'll be honest.
Kevin, we're gonna edit that out. No, now you got to keep it in.
I gotta keep it in.
What was I gonna say? Okay, I love asking entrepreneurs this question, so I have to ask it. Who's your biggest competitor? Who are you most... Okay, two things. Who's your biggest competitor? Because I don't know the space. Mm-hmm. And what keeps you up at night related to this business?
My biggest competitor doesn't know we're competitors. The closest thing we get compared to...
Then don't say it. Then don't... Okay, that's fine.
No. Even if they know about us, we're so small for them.
Okay.
They've actually looked at our market and decided it was too small for them, right? But
Gotcha.
Hey, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? So, they were, the thing we get compared to the most often is LinkedIn, is LinkedIn Learning, right? So so basically because we offer, a mixture, well, it's like LinkedIn plus the learning. So not exactly LinkedIn Learning, but we have a learning, component as well. So it's kind of a weird mixture. So we offer a mixture of, the professional network aspect coupled with some learning, right? And coupled with some capabilities that allows sort of leadership to know what skills different people within the organizations have, right? And allows sort of that discovery, right, of skill sets within an organization, right? So that's our closest competitor. But the thing is, we, the niche we serve is so small that, big companies like Microsoft, right, they don't even bother, they just go after, basically they do big game hunting, so we're too small.
Okay. And what keeps you up at night?
Making payroll, man.
Johnny's biggest Achilles heel right there. Right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you still sort of, when you still have to depend on sort of the next 2 or 3 contracts, right? When you don't have enough to be sort of comfortable yet, but you still got a business, you're still operating, you're still okay, but that anxiety in the back of your mind saying, you know what? We are a 6-month, dry spell in the sales cycle, right, away from being in trouble, right? Like when you're still at that stage in a company, of course you're gonna lose some sleep at night. It's just natural, right? And anybody who's ever built a business knows this feeling very well.
Dude, what keeps me up at night is our pipeline, and trying to keep one going, especially right now over the last 2 years with the way companies are just not spending money anymore and training. Like the pipeline is what keeps me. So my 2 stepkids are really funny because they were like, you must be rich because you own your own company. And dude, I just start laughing. I'm like, just because you own a company, it doesn't mean that you're rich. If anything, it could mean that you're quite poor.
Right. Very much. Very much.
And I'm not poor. I'm paying the bills every month. But like the weird, I don't know what the word is, but the myth that if you own your own business, you must be wealthy is like super interesting.
Yep.
Okay, we're totally. In fact, I went over, so Kevin's gonna have to kill some spaces there. Okay,
right.
Johnny. First of all, wonderful story, dude. I love this story. I love the entrepreneur. I think you're gonna finish this business. You're gonna go work for Cisco, and then you're gonna come back and do another one.
Do another one.
And then I'm gonna still have to work when I'm like 70. So I'm gonna call you up, and I'm just gonna say, we're back. No more remote work. We're back in the office. I'll just empty out the garbage cans, Johnny. Just okay. I want to be part of a Johnny startup one day. That's where I want to be. All right. If anybody wants to reach out to you to kind of talk about what they heard, what's the best way? We'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Jay Boursiquot. That's my handle. That's my pretty much everywhere. Or on LinkedIn if that's your jam. Yeah, those are the 2 best places.
Sweet. All right, Johnny. Thank you for hanging out with us here. And next time, I promise everybody we're going to get Johnny playing that guitar. He's just lying to us that he doesn't play. He's got imposter syndrome, but I know that he can jam on that thing. Anyway, this is the On Labs podcast signing off with Johnny and Bill, and hope to see everybody again real soon.